Welcome to Legally 40ish. I'm Natasha.
I'm Allegra.
We are 40ish attorneys, and we're going to talk for maybe 40ish minutes about some happenings in the news, both with the Real Housewives and politicians. So Erika Girardi and Tom Girardi and Matt Gaetz are going to be the topic of today's episode. So Allegra, let's get started.
Alrighty.
What's going on with Erika and Tom Girardi?
Well, what a trio. Erika, Tom, and Matt Gaetz. Well, first, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills premieres this week. So I know you're really, really excited about that. I have decided.
So excited.
Yeah. I've decided I'm going to make Natasha watch the premiere episode. She's never watched an entire episode of any Housewives. So, which is like a complete travesty. I don't even understand how that's possible. Just existing in the world, but whatever. So May 19th, which also happens to be my husband's birthday, but
I have plans.
No, you don't. It's a Wednesday.
I have plans. I feel like I do.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure that you get a copy of the episode and you're going to watch it. So Erika Girardi, she is a Beverly Hills housewife and her husband is Tom Girardi. I have kind of not been sure if I was comfortable talking about the Tom Girardi legal issues in a public fashion because Natasha and I are both, well, I'm a personal injury attorney. Natasha used to be a personal injury attorney. So we've worked in the same community as Tom Girardi. He is.
I don't anymore. So
she broke free. But yeah, so we work in the same community. I've actually worked alongside Tom's now former firm on a very large case that I handled. And I've, my dealings with them and their firm have been nothing but positive, and they've been incredibly kind and lovely and gracious. So that aside, the allegations against him are pretty significant. Have you heard anything about what's going on with Tom specifically?
Yeah. My friend Allegra keeps freaking texting me about something's going on. Is he being investigated by the state bar for not sharing attorney's fees properly? What's going on, Allegra? Tell us, because I know I'm in the minority of people who don't watch The Housewives. So recognizing that, you tell us what people want to hear, which is what the hell is going on? What's happening?
Well, I'm sure people care more about how Erika is involved in this, but I have to give backstory on what's going on with Tom. So Tom, like I said, is a personal injury attorney, or was, and he had this big firm called Girardi Keese. And Girardi Keese is a contingency-based law firm. So you know what that is, but for people who don't, essentially when someone is injured or wronged by the negligence of someone else, they hire an attorney like me or Tom Girardi, and they usually have no way to pay the fees to hire an attorney. So what the firm decides to do is to take that case on contingency, meaning they won't take any fees unless and until they recover money on your behalf. So usually the fees somewhere between 1/3 to 40%. And so, for example, if the case settles or resolves for $1 million, the firm or the attorney handling the case would get $400,000 for a 40% cut. So that's how contingency-based law firms work. It's standard. That's what, in personal injury, that's what happens. So Tom is being accused not only by the state bar. The state bar is investigating him, but there have been lawsuits brought against him for failing to pay those settlement funds to his injured client. So what has happened, or what's been...
Geez.
Oh, yeah.
That's bad.
It's not only bad, it's awful. It's stealing, and it's stealing from the most vulnerable. It's awful. Like, I can't think of anything worse. So go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Oh, no, that was just my reaction. My mouth.
You got a mouth. She has her mouth open like,
I didn't realize that. I had only heard about the state bar complaints.
Oh, no.
That's really bad. Like, that is like when you hire an attorney, they are acting as your fiduciary, which means you are representing someone's interests. You are acting on behalf of them. You are putting your trust in this person to represent you and to do what they say they're going to do. And part of that is giving you your money when it's due. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. So it's actually, it's really, it's awful for these victims, right? So they hired him because he had such notoriety because his firm, or Tom specifically, was involved in the Aaron Brockovich case, which, as we know, was turned into a movie in like 2000. Julia Roberts won an Oscar. So the movie got a lot of attention, and from that, Tom got a lot of attention. So he is charming. He is, and he was really well known for being stellar at his job. So people put a lot of faith and trust in him. And these people are, some of them, like the plane crash, excuse me, these are the surviving family of the victims who died in plane crashes. And it's alleged that he stole their money, essentially.
This also is so interesting to hear about because this is not a man who needs the money. He's a very, very rich man. That's, I'm guessing, how Erika Jayne got on the Housewives, right? Like, you don't, like, I couldn't be on the Housewives. Well, I couldn't be on it for a very different reason because I'm not a housewife. Anyway, but like that is.
There have been single women on Housewives.
Really?
Yeah.
What do they do?
Bethany Frankel was not ever married when she was definitely single when she was first hired onto New York.
You don't say, huh?
Mm-hmm. So you still have a chance.
Awesome.
Put that back on your vision board. Anyway,
sorry. Yeah. So this is not a man who needs the money. Not that, it's like when you're stealing from someone, it just, sometimes you wonder what the motivation is there. And it's particularly confusing when it's someone who's already incredibly wealthy.
Well, I think, oh, for sure. But I think that part of the allegation is that, he needed this to fund his incredibly lavish lifestyle and his wife's lavish lifestyle. Part of her thing on Beverly Hills is that she is incredibly wealthy, and that Tom, they have 2 planes. So you see her picking between a plane that they're going to take to go on a vacation. And she brags that her glam alone is $40,000 a month. And she has, well, if you don't know, Erika Jayne, the personality, is a singer. And she has a song called It's Expensive to Be Me. And so, did you not know this?
I knew she had like a song and a dance.
She has more than a song and a dance, but yes.
That's hilarious. Now I'm kind of interested. Like, now, like, this is actually cracking me up.
See, it's entertainment, Natasha, not stealing from victims of horrible tragedies.
Yes, the housewives themselves. Okay.
Yes. So part of, when you go on these shows, these women flaunt their wealth, and particularly Beverly Hills, that one in particular there's a lot of money circulating. So it seems as if Girardi was there's an allegation that he was running his firm like a Ponzi scheme. So, where you're like, okay, this settlement isn't in yet, but it's going to come in. So I know I can spend this money here. And by the time this one resolves, I can pay those clients. And so you're always just relying on the next settlement check to come in. But first of all, that's illegal, but also, also in what we do, for people who don't know, attorneys are highly regulated by the state bar, especially when it comes to client funds. If there's anything that's going to get you in trouble, it's commingling or screwing up your trust account. And the way that works is that when attorneys have client funds, essentially that $1 million settlement that I told you, that's the client's money. None of it's the attorney's money. It goes into a trust account, and it sits in that trust account until the attorney provides the client with a breakdown of the costs, including the attorney's fees. The client has the opportunity to review it. The client has an opportunity to ask for, hey, I don't understand what this was for. Can you show me what you spent that money on? It's the client's money. They ask for an accounting. The attorney has to provide it to them. And unless and until the client signs off on the distribution of the funds, the money remains in the client trust account, and it's earmarked for that specific client. So it sounds as if Tom was either not depositing it into the client trust account at all, or taking it out without doing an accounting, without doing any of the things that he's supposed to do, and then hoping that the next settlement check will come in and he'll take care of it then. So that's essentially kind of what a Ponzi scheme is robbing Peter to pay Paul.
That's crazy. I didn't realize all of that. I just
Yeah.
thought it was a state bar, and also he's old, so like I don't know how much he practices anymore. So even if he got disbarred, for instance, I mean, it's a big deal to get disbarred, but if he's done practicing, maybe that. But these are like civil complaints, right? And like people have made in the civil system that they've actually sued Tom.
Yep. And so where it kind of gets dicey for Miss Erika Jayne herself. So she was named in one of the lawsuits personally.
I was going to ask that. Was she named? Like, why was she named? What's her involvement?
So did you know also that she filed for divorce from Tom last year?
I didn't. This is juicy.
I feel like this is breaking news, and it's so not breaking, but I love that you're excited about it. So she filed for divorce.
I'm getting toasty.
I know. You got a little balmy under here. So she filed for divorce after about 21, 22 years of marriage. So
they were married that long?
Yeah. I mean, this was a real marriage. This wasn't
was it a real marriage, or was it like, I mean, I don't know how to ask this, which were they
having sex? Oh. I wasn't sure where you were going. I guess I went the wrong way.
Whether they were having sex or not, but like, were they? Is this? I don't know. I guess the image that it puts forward, it's not. We shouldn't judge people, but it's like the image that gets put forth, especially on the Housewives of Beverly Hills, is that you have a really young woman with a really old rich man, and the young woman looks a certain way, like Erika Jayne, and it's expensive to be her, whatever I mean, I do ask the question, and maybe I shouldn't, but it does. Like, I think a lot of people would just, you look at that and it's like, is this a real marriage? I don't know. Maybe that's a terrible thought to have, generally speaking, but.
Well, I don't think it's a terrible thought. It's reasonable. And I think, we don't know. So, I mean, we're not in it. No one knows what goes on behind closed doors, but
we're not in it. I thought we were. Like, I thought, okay. I mean, I have been on honeymoons before that aren't mine. So I thought like maybe that.
Well, the tiny glimpse we get into their relationship on the show, it seems as if there's a lot of real love there. I mean, she was much younger when she met him, but it seems she genuinely seemed to respect him. And I don't know what kind of, if it was romantic love or what kind of love it was, but it did seem like they had a genuinely nice relationship at points from what we saw on the show. That's all I can base it off of. I don't have any insider knowledge into anything else.
I think that's fair to say that, but you do kind of wonder, because the whole thing is that they showcase these people's lives because they're, wealthy. Like, they would be pretty boring for those cameras to come into our houses.
Yeah.
And like, they would find some Taco Bell trash at my house. They'd find Starbucks cups like lined up at your house. It would just be really boring. So it's like, obviously there's a show to put on. And I think what the reason we like Housewives, the reason we like, so I'll just specifically say with Bravo and the Housewives, is that they do lead a somewhat aspirational life. I think that's a prerequisite to being on the show. No one wants to see like someone, struggling or whatever. It's entertainment. It seems fancy and fun. And Erika brought all of that to the show. She's beautiful, and she has this kind of interesting life where she's, Mrs. Tom Girardi, which is a wife of a very highly powerful and successful attorney. But then she has this other side where she's Erika Jayne, who's this singer, performer, kind of like sex pot. So she had these two sides, and it was entertainment. And Tom, when she came on the show, Tom really, it seemed like she had a lot of money. It was real. It didn't seem as if it was like this charade or this House of Cards. Did she or did she not have some video a few years ago about her or a pussy?
So that was something on the Housewives, like a dance move.
Yeah, there was something, right? Like, I remember a bunch of us I won't say where we were watching it, and I remember being like, what is her career? Like, that's when I knew she was like a dancer or performer or whatever, but I do recall something about a song or a dance about a pussy.
No, well, no, it was just like pat the puss.
That's
Like a dance move.
I don't know why I got so excited there. That was
I mean, I'm not going to stand up and show you, but yes, it was on the show. So, yeah, I mean,
it's like a move that you
mhm,
do. Well, not you do, obviously, but okay. No, I
Yeah.
just, yeah, that just popped into my head. I was like, I remember watching something.
You're not wrong.
Thank you.
And I'm surprised that alone didn't hook you and make you want to keep watching the show. But
I wasn't watching the show. Someone was just
Oh.
showing me like a clip of something. Something. And there was like a music video, I thought.
Oh, so I haven't watched her music videos, but yeah, she has quite a few music videos.
Okay. Okay, so Tom Girardi.
So he could be in serious trouble, but how Erika's getting roped into this whole thing, which is where I went off on a tangent. Erika's actually named in one of the lawsuits personally. And she has a company, an LLC. I think it's for her entertainment company. I think it's called EJ Global or something like that. They're also named in this particular lawsuit. And there's allegations that Tom, once he stole the client money, that he loaned, quote unquote, Girardi Keese loaned millions of dollars to EJ Global. So there's an allegation that there's like a scheme to embezzle these funds, that they're not really loans. They're just, but the allegation is like $20 million. That's a lot of friggin' money. Like, I mean,
yeah, I have that, but like not that much when you really think about it. No, that is a lot of money.
So that's how she's getting roped in. And again, that is just an allegation. I have there's been nothing that I've seen so far that proves that actually occurred. And could they have been legitimate loans? Sure, but Girardi Keese has no business as a law firm lending money to the sole shareholder's wife without repayment. It's just very strange. It's all very strange. So it does sort of sound fishy if that actually happened. But at the end of the day, most of the allegations and most of the wrongdoing really fall back on Tom. Erika's not a lawyer. Erika's not part of the law firm. And what her husband was doing, really, she may have not known anything about it. I think that's kind of what people are gossiping about now. Erika must have known. She must have known that her husband was stealing money from his clients, but I don't necessarily think that she knew or would have to know. What do you think?
I think that's going to be a really hard thing to prove, is her involvement in this.
But forget like legal involvement, just moral involvement. Do you think that as the wife of a very high-powered, wealthy attorney for over 20 years, that you would necessarily have knowledge that money's coming from stealing from his clients?
I don't think it's a given that she would have knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, without actually knowing, you and I, that's based off of just general kind of observations and other people. But I think there's a lot of shit that goes on like that, especially if is she questioning every single financial move he ever makes? Like, probably not. I would imagine not. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a good chance she didn't know, based on no real information whatsoever.
Sure.
Based on what we've been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, based on my brief synopsis, I think that, and I don't know how, Erika also on the show presents herself. You don't get a lot of insight into what she's feeling and thinking all the time. She's kind of cold. She's a little bit, she doesn't share a lot of like her struggles. And I think that makes it difficult to even gauge based on what we know about her from the show, which might be actually nothing because we don't know her. Actually, it's a show. But even from what we see on the show, you can't be like, well, I see how she acts, so she must have known. Like, their relationship was such that how could a wife not know? But it appears that she had her businesses, she had her things that she was doing. But in terms of her relationship with Tom, he took care of her. And why would you question someone who's been so successful for so long and it's seemingly doing quite well?
Yeah, I think I would ask a different question if I was married to someone and they made like very little money, and then all of a sudden they started bringing in $20 million. I might be like, how? Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, there are certain circumstances where you might question it, but yeah, I think that brings up a good point that they have had money conceivably for years and years. The thing that people might not realize about plaintiffs' attorneys and why they often do get a bad rap as ambulance chasers and being greedy, is that you can make a shit ton of money being a plaintiff's attorney.
Mm-hmm.
You can make, millions. I didn't make that when I was a plaintiff's attorney. So, not every, it was like, I had the opportunity, I guess you could say. We all have the opportunity, but you could, I wonder if people realize just how much money you can make doing that. So yeah. And then to tie that to Erika, it's like, she's used to Tom making that kind of money. And I can't imagine she's watching what his law firm does.
No. And also Tom or Girardi case, like if you work in the plaintiff's world in Southern California, maybe all over the state, but specifically we live in Orange County. We practice in Orange County. Girardi was in LA. Everyone knows who Girardi is. They're super huge supporters of all of the organizations, and they're very prominent. Their name is prominent. They receive a ton of referrals from other smaller firms who send their cases to Girardi because Girardi's going to hit it out of the park. They have this huge name, and they've had a long history of success. So it's not as if he came and, rose to prominence out of nowhere and all of a sudden he has all this money. This has been who he is, a longstanding, prominent, successful plaintiff's attorney in this world. So I think from her perspective, it would be difficult to know if there's been no change in their lifestyle, because, and perhaps that could be a motivation why he was doing what he was doing, because you want to keep up with the Joneses. You still want to be the number one. And it's very sad. It's a very sad situation for really all the families involved. They've been, some of them, the burn victims, people who have suffered horrific tragedy only to then have their money stolen by their attorney who they trusted with the rest of their life. Like, it makes me sick to my stomach.
I just can't imagine that. I don't want to discredit any of these plaintiffs. And again, we should mention they are allegations. They haven't been proven. There's a lawsuit pending in civil court. Okay, so yeah, multiple lawsuits. But it's crazy to me, if it's true, that's just terrible, awful, horrendous. But it's so hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that someone, and I think you can say this about a lot of people, someone that successful would go and do something this stupid that you could easily get caught for. And it's just insane to me for if he really did this.
Well, that's a whole nother level of like
keeping up with the Joneses, as you say. But to me, I look at that and I'm like, it's not an excuse, obviously, but at least sometimes it explains behavior. But it's like, oh, what the fuck, man?
Well, and that's like another layer that's somewhat interesting about not having been caught so far. There's been state bar allegations against him for a long time, like very, very long time. And there was a really, really good article, I think it was written by the LA Times, about his involvement with the state bar and kind of like whining and dining state bar investigators and dodging all of these allegations for so many years. Like I said, when I said this kind of at the top of when we started talking, commingling client funds is like the one thing you're going to get totally screwed for. Like it, and you should get that 100%. And that's great. That's the whole point. But even a minor mistake in your client trust account it can raise concerns by the state bar. So the fact that these allegations have been going on for, I think, well over a decade and nothing has happened until now is scary. And so I think that's sort of an interesting twist of what's going on with the state bar. Yeah, icky, because they're getting invited to all of his parties, and
he does throw. You've been to some of his parties. Like he throws some shit. Like
he throws some good parties. We went to the Girardi party in Vegas. So we have this annual conference in Vegas every year, and when I say we, there's a LA Consumer Attorneys organization that throws a conference every year, and Tom
throws a conference, like you.
Sorry,
some party.
You know what I meant. I misspoke. They hold a conference, a legal conference, MCLE's educational program, and there's parties that are happen at the same time while we were there. So Tom, the Girardi party every year is a pretty epic party. And I have been to that, and that was a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie, but hopefully
it wasn't commingled funds.
No, it's terrible.
Yeah, the state bar shit is, I mean, that's also just another example of like when people in power and people who, he is a powerful man in a lot of ways, and he has resources. And how often do we hear this in our society, that someone with money and resources and connections gets a free pass?
I know.
I know, and bullshit.
So here's the shit that's happening now. He's been forced into bankruptcy, and he's now under.
Girardi's in bankruptcy?
Yes.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and the firm's gone. Girardi Keys doesn't
now
exist.
This makes way more sense. Like to why he would do it.
No, well, yeah. I mean, you have no money. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You've spent all your money.
I didn't realize he filed for bankruptcy.
I think he was forced into bankruptcy by his creditors. But okay, there's another layer. So now he's under conservatorship, claiming that he has Alzheimer's. And so they're so they're blaming, and I don't know, he might. So I'm not making light of that. That's not a joke. It's not funny.
But that's just another, like, for some reason I still thought he was like practicing law. I mean,
Girardi Keys is gone. Girardi Keys ceases to exist.
I did not know that. See, I left the plaintiff world like 2 years ago.
And they say when his let me find it.
Wow.
When his assets were frozen, the firm had only $15,000 in the operating account. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So he had no money. I mean, he was robbing Peter to pay Paul. He wasn't doing this but obviously it came out of overspending in some aspect of his life. And that's where some of these lawsuits allege that it's his overspending in his personal life and his need to keep up appearances for his wife. And that's how Erika's getting really roped into all of this. So now Tom doesn't practice law anymore. He's been investigated by the state bar. His license, it says it's inactive. He's not eligible to practice law. He's refusing to participate in the state bar proceedings. And he's apparently has Alzheimer's and is under conservatorship and isn't even really participating in any of the legal proceedings because his conservator is handling that.
Wow.
It's a lot.
But that makes me think that he did it then.
Yeah.
Like that. Because it's surprising when you hear of someone who had so much success at one point, who was really reputable. It's like been run into the ground in all of this legal drama. And the other crazy thing is the plaintiff world would probably be talking about this, but the fact that his wife is one of the housewives also makes this national news, national interest and importance. And it's always interesting when people open up their lives, like when we were talking about Jen Shah, who obviously knew she was engaging in alleged wrongful conduct, but then goes on a TV show. And like, you're obviously if you put yourself out into the public eye in any way, shape, or form, you are putting yourself out there for, it's not to say that all your privacy should be obliterated, but you are inviting some degree of notoriety and people talking about what's going on. And so Tom, I feel like, would not fly under the radar, but for the housewives, but it would be a lot less juicy and interesting to people if it was
for sure
in the plaintiff world,
For sure. And I think the last thing I'll kind of say about this, which is what makes me excited for the new season of Beverly Hills, is that, like I told you, I do, because I'm like, Beverly Hills has been notoriously shitty, in my opinion, like the last few seasons. These are the women who really try to like produce their own show, that you can tell they're not always being honest about what's going on in their life. They don't really want the dirty laundry aired because they want to keep up a certain appearance. And like I told you earlier, Erika kind of has this little bit cold demeanor. She doesn't really let you into what she's thinking and feeling. So what's exciting about the new season, and which makes me actually want to watch, where maybe I wouldn't have before, is that in the trailer for this season, she's actually talking about it. She's talking about the lawsuit, and the women, of course, are gossiping like fucking crazy, because it's like, how could she not know? And what was her involvement? And she is actually going to discuss it. I don't know how much she will or how much she even can because it's still ongoing litigation, but it's definitely not something they're avoiding, which will make for a more interesting season, I hope. Is that terrible?
So when were these lawsuits filed? So what stage are we in these lawsuits? Like,
oh God, you're quizzing me.
But no, I'm just trying to give people like when we're going to know more about these lawsuits. Essentially,
okay. So
really hard question. I realize.
So the case in which Erika and EJ Global LLC, her company, are named as defendants, it was only filed in December of 2020. Okay. So we aren't even scratching the surface. It's a federal court case. So the lawsuit was filed in the Northern District of Illinois, Eastern Division. And so, I mean, for people who don't understand how the wheels of justice.
Federal causes of action?
Yeah.
Because like, the thing about federal court is it's harder for plaintiffs typically because it requires a unanimous jury, whereas most state courts do not require unanimous juries in civil cases. So unless they had to file in federal court, I'm surprised by that a little bit.
Well, it might be diversity. Hold on. Let me, I don't want to waste time trying to scroll through and find the actual causes of action. Okay, so count 1, unjust enrichment, and that's against Erika Jayne. Count 2, accounting. Count 3, well, that doesn't involve Erika, a breach of contract. Count 4, tortious interference with a contract. Conversion. Count 5.
Conversion, that's like you learned that first semester in law school, and
I know.
You never think that it's going to apply, but there it is.
So yeah, that's the lawsuit pending against Erika. And yeah, for people who don't understand how slow the civil system works, a case filed in December, we're only here in May. We probably haven't even begun doing anything really of substance. And then he has the bankruptcy proceedings. And then there's the state bar proceedings. And there's additional lawsuits against Tom. I'm not sure if Erika's named in any other lawsuit personally. But I think we got a couple years maybe before this all kind of settles.
Yeah.
Resolves. And Tom's old. I mean, he's in his 80s. So, and apparently suffering from Alzheimer's. So I don't know what that means.
I mean, that's really sad if that's true for anyone that would suffer from Alzheimer's, but there's a lot of drama there.
Yeah. And people are alleging, and I don't know if it's true or not, and I would never make the allegation, but that he's faking it so he doesn't have to deal with the consequences of his actions.
I mean, it's not, if he's truly now who he appears to be, you can't rule that out, right? I mean,
sure.
Which is terrible. You don't want to ever say that about anyone, that they would fake something that's such an awful, awful disease. I don't have an opinion on that because I obviously truly have no information, but I can see how people would jump to that.
Yeah. So that's what's happening. May 19th, Beverly Hills premiere. Natasha's going to be glued to the television, watching it unfold. I think I'm going to force her to though too, because I mean, this isn't like a job. Yeah. Well, can we watch it together but apart?
Wow.
I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, but like maybe we can watch it on Thursday because Steven's birthday is on Wednesday.
I thought
his birthday, his actual birthday is May 19th.
Okay. I mean, I guess like I could just come too. I mean,
I don't think he wants to watch Beverly Hills for his birthday though.
I don't even want to watch Beverly Hills,
but we have a job to do here, Natasha. This is a requirement for you.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, an unpaid job, but it's a labor of love.
We need a sponsor.
We do. Okay, so we don't.
Wait,
what if? Oh God, Okay, so we have just like just
everywhere.
If you're only listening.
Oh yeah, I forget that. Yeah. No, go ahead.
Something just happened and I think she like had a small seizure.
No, I was holding up. For those that are just listening, I have a McDonald's cup I don't know why. I've never eaten at McDonald's, but I have a McDonald's cup and I've been drinking the whole time, and I like sat it down and it almost spilled everywhere. So all you could see though was me like looking like
her herky jerky movements. Okay, so we only have like 10 minutes left. I want to know what's going on with Matt Gaetz, because last night my husband tried to tell me like, oh, some shit's happening with Matt Gaetz. I said, don't tell me. Natasha and I are going to talk about it tomorrow. So I am relying on you for all of the Matt Gaetz info.
Matt Gaetz, if you don't know who he is a Florida congressman. He kind of rose to, I'm going to put prominence in quotes because I don't think he's prominent, but he is a prominent figure, so to speak, nationally now.
And you've heard his name and he's in the news.
Yeah, and he really kind of rose with Trump. He's a big MAGA Trumper guy.
You say MAGA? I thought it was MAGA.
I actually don't know.
It just sounded.
What did I say?
You said MAGA. You said MAGA. You said MAGA. I think it's MAGA.
I don't know. I mean, we could ask
Trumper.
Someone.
Someone will tell us, I'm sure.
Yeah. Anyway, he's a big Make America Great Again guy. And so he's in the news a lot just for being close to Trump and another kind of big Republican in the House, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and they were on a tour recently. So Matt Gaetz he's a conservative, so he's Republican, obviously. But there's been in the news, he is being investigated by the federal government for possibly having sex with a minor, paying women for sex. So there may be some child sex trafficking allegations, paying women for sex, which of course is illegal in a lot of places. And so the significant thing that happened yesterday, though, is Matt Gaetz has this friend, but he's being referred to as an associate. I feel like calling someone an associate other than at a law firm is like a way of being like talking about a criminal enterprise, where you're like, oh, they were associates, but they were associated with one another. And this Joel Greenberg guy was indicted on 33 charges last year.
Dang.
Including child sex trafficking and paying women for sex, all these things. And it's kind of been thought all along that that's how they started investigating Matt Gaetz, because these two were around each other a lot. Matt Gaetz was involved in this. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you just tell everyone that another way they thought maybe Matt Gaetz was involved was because of his Venmo transactions with Mr. Greenberg?
There are some Venmo transactions that apparently these guys used Venmo to pay women for sex. And I don't know if they didn't realize that they were public, or they also put on there apparently like when I I shouldn't admit it, but I may or may not have gotten my hair bleached during COVID. And I paid my hairstylist via Venmo, but I put a wine glass, I didn't say it was like she came to my house and did my hair and we wore masks.
Illegal hair services.
It was technically illegal, I guess, but it was we were both wearing masks. She came to the house.
It's okay. I'm not here to judge you.
I'm really defensive about it.
You are. I'm calm down. No one said anything.
I know. But the point is I paid her on Venmo, but I didn't write and obviously no one gave a shit what I was doing. But the point is I knew
you weren't paying for sex with children. That's a little different. But I think you did write some.
Yeah, that's very different. But I did put a little wine glass instead of what it actually was, because I thought I just don't want it out there when I'm actually, but these guys apparently just put shit on there, names and it was interesting. It's also stupid. But this Joel Greenberg guy, the kind of word on the street was he was going to strike a plea deal with prosecutors, and he was facing decades in prison. He was facing some very serious charges with some very serious prison time. As of yesterday, they have a plea agreement. He's going to plead to 6 of the 33 charges. So this is a significant, if you're charged with 33 crimes or 33 charges against you, for the federal government to agree to 6 of them only means that they think he's got something.
Oh, he's rolling on some people for sure. Yeah.
And so the plea deal doesn't mention Matt Gaetz by name, but it does mention others, right? So it doesn't mention names, but it says there were others involved in these various shady shit going on.
Okay. So when you say it doesn't mention Matt Gaetz, it mentions nobody's name in particular.
Right.
Okay.
It just says others.
Okay.
So the speculation is that it's Matt Gaetz, though. And you have to also look at the federal government is not going to give someone, especially someone who committed child sex trafficking,
Sure.
a break unless there's someone bigger than them that they can get for shit. So Matt Gaetz has not been indicted yet. There's just been investigations. But what is going to happen next is, as long as the plea deal is signed, he's supposed to plead guilty on Monday, Joel Greenberg, this Matt Gaetz associate, and then the information needs to start coming. Now, it's conditioned on whether he actually, kind of gives information, and it's not going to be just what Joel Greenberg says. Joel Greenberg is a criminal. Joel Greenberg is not exactly a trustworthy individual. So the idea is that there's going to be text messages. There's going to be actual tangible pieces of evidence that Joel Greenberg's going to give up in order to implicate others, which everyone is speculating is going to be Matt Gaetz. And we're talking about sex with minors. We're talking about paying women for sex. I mean, this is illegal conduct. And whether Matt Gaetz engaged in it or not is what's being investigated. And so we'll know more once this starts coming forward of whether they're going to indict Matt Gaetz. But right now, the difference is Matt Gaetz you'll see a lot of it. It's public allegations right now. And it makes sense when a congressperson is involved in some shady shit, which I think a lot of people would say every congressperson is involved in something of varying degree. But you have a very well-known Republican congressman that may or may not be involved in child sex trafficking and paying for sex with women. And it's juicy. So of course, everyone's going to talk about it. And House Republicans haven't really, I think there's a lot less offenses that people tell people to resign over, or
how about Cheney?
Yeah. But it's just, So as of yesterday, Joel Greenberg, they struck the plea deal. He's obviously got something that is going to be worthy of the federal government going, it's pretty lenient. And, anybody striking a plea deal they're in it for themselves, right? Because they're trying to get a better deal, trying to get less prison time.
Yeah.
So it's not that Joel Greenberg's being kind, it's this to benefit him, but
of course,
because conceivably there's going to be a lot of shit that comes out of this.
So when do you think we'll have any more information as it relates to Matt Gaetz? A week, 2 weeks?
I don't know.
Do we have any clue?
Assuming everything goes well on Monday in terms of pleading, I don't know how far along they are in the investigation.
Sure.
And how, how quickly he has to provide what he says he has. And I'm sure that, they need to corroborate the evidence. I know there's also the women that were involved that they're not investigating and interviewing and talking to and seeing what witnesses they have. I mean, these are very serious charges if they're, or allegations at this point, but if they become charges against Matt Gaetz, that's a big fucking deal.
And I'd have to say, I would guess that since he's been under investigation, or charges were brought against Greenberg a while back, that probably this entire time they've been working on gathering information so that they could reach some sort of agreement for a plea deal. I don't think they would just, we would be at the stage without having the investigators already involved in that process. And so it's probably pretty far along.
Yeah. I think they're, they only share so much, but it's been ongoing. And I think just Democrats are waiting on the edge of their seat to see, they're pretty confident, I think, that Matt Gaetz is going to be indicted based on the fact that if the others that Joel Greenberg is talking about in his plea deal is Matt Gaetz, then that guy, Matt Gaetz would be facing serious prison time, potentially.
Well, it's super interesting, and I'll be ready to hear what happens as things unfold for sure. So we kind of reached the end of our time. We did it about 40-ish minutes, which was our goal. We spent all of the time on Erika Jayne, so I apologize.
I think that's probably what people prefer. I wonder, do you think what if you did like the Real Housewives of Congress?
That's probably actually juicy, but there was
you probably actually couldn't do it because, I don't know, confidentiality, whatever.
National security.
Or like the Real Housewives of the Supreme Court.
I mean, okay, your ideas are getting worse by the second. It's been fun. This was a good time for me. I love all things pop culture, and I also am enjoying hearing about Matt Gaetz. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, till next time.